Hi, my name is Roma. Welcome or welcome back to Star Pages. Today I'm going to be starting a reading vlog where I read Kalynn Bayron's entire backlist or most of her backlist. And this started because I had placed Kalynn Bayron on two of my lists, like my favorite authors of all times list and my author by authors list. And then I had her on there for about 2 years. And then I was thinking, that not making any sense because I've only read two of her books, and those two books were a duology, right? I've only read two, and she had multiple books out. And I didn't know if it was just those two books that I really liked or if it's going to be a trend for her entire backlist. And then I also realized This Poison Heart wasn't her first book, so there was one before that I hadn't read, Cinderella Is Dead. So I decided I was going to read her entire backlist and then make a decision as to whether or not she's going to stay on the favorite authors list and the author by authors list, right? And then I decided I'm going to do a reading vlog. So how this book is going to go is I'm going to introduce the book that I'm reading, give a synopsis. Then you're going to see the clips of me reading it, any thoughts I have while reading it, and then we're going to come back here and I'm going to give the final review. However, there were three books I read before I decided to film the review. So This Poison Heart and This Wicked Fate, which were the books I read by Kalynn Bayron that I loved and decided, oh yeah, she's a favorite author. And I wasn't going to reread them because I've reread them multiple times already. And the last time I did a reread, it was too close to the start of this reading vlog to read it again. So I didn't want to do that. And then Cinderella Is Dead, which I had read this year, I think, maybe. I'll have to check, but it was this year. I already had the review written down, so I didn't need to reread it, right? So I'm going to give those reviews first, and then we're going to move on to the other books. Oh, she had some books before Cinderella Is Dead, and I think they were, I don't know if they were, I think they were like indie published or self-published or something, and I read the description and I was not interested, right? I wasn't interested in them. And I just decided not to include them. Okay, so we're doing her traditionally published backlist. So Cinderella Is Dead. It's 200 years after Cinderella found her prince, but the fairy tale is over. Teen girls are now required to appear at the annual ball where the men of the kingdom select wives based on the girls' display of finery. If a suitable match is not found, the girls not chosen are never heard from again. 16-year-old Sophie would much rather marry Erin, her childhood best friend, than parade in front of suitors. At the ball, Sophie makes a desperate decision to flee and finds herself hiding in Cinderella's mausoleum. There, she meets Constance, the last known descendant of Cinderella and her stepsisters. Together, they vow to bring down the kingdom once and for all, and in the process, they learn that there's more to Cinderella's stories than they ever knew. So, the review. I gave this book 3 stars, and I'm wavering between lowering it to a 2.5 or keeping it at 3 stars. I haven't decided yet, but I'm going to put up the final decision up on the screen so you know what rating it was. It felt like a major step down, and I'm not going to be too harsh on it because it is the debut book, so this one I should have read first. But I want to say it's a compliment to Kalynn Bayron's writing style, where you can see the growth from this one to This Poison Heart and This Wicked Fate. And I think if I had read this book first, also if I had read it when I was a little bit younger, I would have really enjoyed it. So it's a matter of timing, I think, is the biggest issue, but also there are others. The idea behind the world building was compelling. Unfortunately, a lot was left to be desired. There are a lot of details that weren't there. It was like the story, the idea of the story is the blank page in the coloring book, and the writing, as you read through the story, it's supposed to be filled in, right? The page is not completed. There's a lot of details that were hinted at that weren't actually fleshed out. So the time period is very, very vague. I have no idea when this is supposed to be set in because we know it's 200 years after Cinderella found her prince, but there doesn't seem to be any sort of advancement between. I don't think of it as like Disney Cinderella, right? I don't think of it as taking place 200 years after Disney Cinderella. But say for instance, it's 200 years after Disney Cinderella. The all of the technology, everything there is the same as what they had in the movie, like the horse-drawn carriages. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing different about the Cinderella story and then this one. And then even in the flashbacks or the history we learn about the Cinderella story, the canon Cinderella story for this book, it still doesn't seem like much changed, you know? So like when is the book set? And to be honest, it does sound a bit nitpicky because the book is very short and the time period isn't especially important for the story. So there's not much reason to go in depth into when it sets and what technology they have and blah, blah, blah. But also, there are certain scenes where it's not like as you read the book, it's just like, okay, when is this? It keeps popping up in my head. Like, when is this set? What are they supposed to have access to at this point? Why don't they have this? Or there wasn't any mention of if Cinderella's story caused any major event to halt or stunt the advancement or the growth of like the country. So why don't they have anything? Or why is it's 200 years? Why is the technology still the same? And then I wasn't the biggest fan of the romance between Sophia and Constance. First of all, it was very, very installed because Sophia met Constance like a couple days after she got rejected, like the final rejection by her childhood best friend Erin. And then she started falling in love with her immediately. So like where's the heartbreak? Where's the like this is your childhood best friend who you were willing to go to jail or like get killed for because you want to marry a girl and not have a man pick you out of the crowd. Like I thought you loved her, but now these other girls show up and all of a sudden she's the new love of your life. So I didn't believe it. And then the feelings that they had, the very large, you know, the very exaggerated romantic feelings Sophie had towards Constance stayed the same throughout the entire book. So there was no development from when they first met. Well, there was no romantic development from when they first met, and then all the stuff that they're doing together, all the planning, all the travels that they're doing together, whatever, whatever, whatever. There was not really any romantic development. There was character development and like plot development, but the romance, their feelings didn't feel any different from when they just met. And it's sounding like a completely negative review so far, so you're probably wondering why I had originally settled on 3 stars. Moving on from the negative things now, the idea behind Cinderella's story was intriguing and I like the way how the details and the history was delivered throughout the story. And even though I didn't feel particularly compelled by Sophia's character or Constance's character, the witch's character was very interesting to me, and those were my like when she was on page, those were my favorite scenes. And luckily, once she was introduced, she was there like for most of the time up until the end. So I got to enjoy her character. Sophia and Constance, they could have died. I wouldn't I wouldn't have cared. And then this is where Cinderella Is Dead moved up from like, okay, I didn't like this to an average read, which is what I have my 3 star books classified as the average reads, right? They were okay. All of the scenes with Sophia after she confronted the king, that is when I really started to enjoy the story. And that is when I was like, okay, maybe Sophia is not that bad. The action, Sophia's decisions, the conflict, all of that was written really well. And then the final reveals of Cinderella's story, all of that was amazing, right? It was very fast paced. And it was just written, I feel like it was just written better than the first 2/3 of the book, which is why it was bumped up to a 3 star. Yeah, but going back to Sophia and Constance, the biggest downfall of this book, the major downfall, like it could have been a 3.5 star, which is to me in my head that's a major difference from a 3 star. It's like a bigger jump. A 3 to a 3.5 star is a bigger jump than a 4 to a 4.5 star or a 2 to a 2.5 star. Because 3 star is average read, and a 3.5 star is, yeah, this is good. I like this. And then we move on from there, right? Mathematically, it's not a bigger jump, but like rating wise, it's a huge jump. All the events after Sophia met the king, this could have been a 3.5 star, but because I disliked the romance so much, and then after all of that with the king, she went back to Constance and they had a little kiss and whatever, whatever, whatever. Because of the romance, it was so weak. like the romantic aspect of this book was so poor. personally. That is why I didn't enjoy the book as much as I could have. That is why that's like the worst part of this book for me. If it was just the romance that I didn't like, I could have ignored it, but because I don't know how to explain it, because I said in their interactions, in their scenes together, why is my hand up? In in their interactions and in their scenes together, there is not much actual romantic development that I could count as building towards like a proper romantic relationship. But so much of the book relies on their romance or them being together or them caring about what happens to each other. So much of the book, or yeah, so much of the book relies on it. But the foundation is so weak. Like, how you going to build? It's like building your house on the mound of sand. There's nothing there to hold it up. So, like, any questioning, any deep diving, the whole thing falls apart. So, that is what I have to say about Cinderella Is Dead. Moving on to This Poison Heart. Ever since she could remember, Breezes has had power over plants. Flowers bloom in her footsteps, and leaves turn to face her as though she were the sun. It's a power she and her adoptive mothers have spent her whole life trying to hide. And then Breezes inherits an old house from her birth mother and suddenly finds herself with the space and privacy to test her powers for the first time. But as Breezes starts to bring the house's rambling garden back to life, she finds she has also inherited generations of secrets. A hidden altar to a goddess, a lineage of witches stretching back to ancient times, and a hidden garden overgrown with the most deadly poisonous plants on earth. And Breezes' long departed ancestors aren't going to let her rest until she accepts her place as the keeper of the terrible power that lies at the heart of the poison garden. Okay, so I gave this book 5 stars. I have reread this book 3 times, and the third reread was right before I decided to start doing the reading vlog, which is why I didn't reread it for the video. I gave the book 5 stars every time, which is why I had Kalynn Bayron like on the favorite authors list. However, as I read more and I evolve more as a reader and a reviewer, I'm noticing there are more things that can impact my reading experience and then the final thoughts I have on a book, because my reading experience and then the final thoughts as I deliver a review and a rating can be very different. So like the way I feel about a book while I'm reading or immediately after I finish reading and then when I sit down to write a review, it can be different, which is why sometimes I'll finish a book and I have the rating on Storygraph at like 4 stars, and then by the time I review it, I post the review, either a written review on Storygraph or I film a video, the rating would be different, right? Or I have a review where like, oh, initially I rated it this, but I might change it to this, which is what happened with Cinderella Is Dead. But this is why I think ratings should be accompanied by reviews if it's going to be something that you want to influence other people. You know, a star rating, everybody knows a star rating is very subjective, but you can have a book where you enjoyed it so much that you give it 4 stars, but you also see all the flaws and you can see how certain things that you can overlook, other readers will not be able to overlook or wouldn't want to overlook, which is why just leaving a star rating there and saying, yes, this is my thought, these are my thoughts, 4 stars, that's it. I don't think that's enough all the time, especially if you consider yourself a book reviewer or a book influencer. But that's just my thoughts. Anyway, all this to say that I kind of wish I reread This Poison Heart and This Wicked Fate. Reading Cinderella Is Dead, right, had me thinking about the romance in This Poison Heart and This Wicked Fate. Like, did I actually like it? And then going to the books after This Poison Heart and This Wicked Fate, like the Vanquisher series, did I it's like, did I like the book as much as I thought I did? And then reading books not written by Kalynn Bayron, in between reading the Kalynn Bayron backlist, once again I'm like, okay, maybe I should have reread it, because I can't, in my head I'm like, okay, this could be different, this could be different. Well, because I don't have the book fresh in my mind, or because I'm not actually reading it in the headspace that I'm at right now, I can't 100% say whether my thoughts on the book have changed. So I'm just going to read the review I have of This Poison Heart, the one that I wrote before reading her other books, and just leave it at that. And then if anything changes, I'll just update it on Storygraph or something. I'm not going to film another review. It might be like in a wrap up or something, but it's probably going to be written on Storygraph. So back to the review, like with my OG thoughts on This Poison Heart. My favorite parts of the book were the character work and the magic system. I was immediately very attached to Breezy's. Her introduction immediately cemented her as an incredibly caring person, and that trait was carried out and reiterated throughout the entire book. One detail I loved was how her kindness didn't result in her being a pushover, right? She didn't allow the other characters to walk over her, or she wasn't a character that had to be dragged along by the plot. Outside of her kindness, I found Bree to be a wonderfully created character, and the character work, the positive character work didn't stop at Bree. Her mothers were also well written. Her friend Carter, I really liked how he was written. And then there are characters that I disliked, and that was also great because I didn't dislike them because they were poorly written. They were written so well that every negative aspect about them was brought out so clearly. In regards to the plot progression, obviously this means how the story moved forward, but what I liked about it was the fact that even though the plot was mostly following Bree as she develops a relationship with Carter and she works on the garden and she explores her powers, the book didn't feel unreasonably slow. Like, it wasn't a fast-paced book. Nobody, like, if you want action upon action upon action, you're not gonna like this Poison Heart. But it's also not a slow book, like an extremely slow book. And then there were certain action scenes, and I feel that the transition between the slower pace scenes, then the high intensity scene, then back to the slower pace scenes, they didn't feel too disjointed. They flowed well into each other. So the pacing overall, it worked for the story. And finally, the magic system. I loved Bree's powers. Personally, I love anything to do with plants, green, or whether it's flowers blooming or extracting poison from the plants or knowing any kind of plant magic. I am all for it. So I was already going to like that. Unless something was done, like something egregious was done, I would have liked the magic. I loved how Bree's powers were written, her thoughts on her struggles with magic and how she grew more comfortable with it, and the general description of what her magic did and how her family's magic worked. Also, it's loosely inspired by Greek mythology, and I feel the way it was incorporated into the book was very interesting. So that's it. Tentatively, no, I'm gonna say 5 stars. If anything changes, you're going to see it on my Storygraph if you even care, right? Yeah, This Wicked Fate. Well, hold on, pause. Obviously, this is going to be a spoiler. Like, I'm not going to do it on purpose, but I can't really review sequels without spoiling the previous books, right? I'm going to try as much as possible to either put a spoiler warning or to be vague about the details while also reviewing the book properly. But just beware. So, Breezes has one chance to save her mother, but she'll need to do the impossible. Find the last fragment of the deadly Absyrtus heart. To locate the missing piece, she must turn to the blood relatives she's never known, learn about their secret powers, and take her place in their ancient lineage. But Breezes is not the only one who wants the heart, and her enemies will stop at nothing to fulfill their ruthless plans. The fates tell a truly dangerous journey, one that could end in more heartache, more death. Strengthened by the sisterhood of the ancient magic, can Breezes harness her power to save the people she loves the most? This one I also gave 5 stars. I reread this book twice. I loved how Bayron expanded on her twist on Greek mythology in this book. There was also an expansion of Bree's powers. Like in The Poison Heart, this book really explores the relationship dynamics of all characters. So we get to see how important Bree's mother, who is called Mom in this book, was to Bree, and her other mother, who's called Mo, through their feelings and behaviors without her. There were also new relationships between Bree and newer characters. The details that I love about the interactions between Bree and these newer characters was twofold. The first one is the hesitancy to explore the relationship both on Bree's side and her family member's side, the newer blood family, and then also how Bree's mother, Mo, encouraged her to explore these relationships if she wanted to, and how she reiterated how much she cared, like Mo cared about Bree. So I really enjoyed that. And I genuinely don't have more to say. Yeah. Moving on. The Vanquishers. I don't know if it's because I don't have an American accent or what, but I cannot figure out how to say this little girl's name. Like her little nickname. I don't know how to say it without sounding stupid. I, and I actually don't want to say it because hearing it just sounds so damn stupid. So I'm going to call her Malika. Malika Boog Wilson and her best friends have grown up idolizing the Vanquishers, a group of heroic vampire hunters who wiped out the last horde of the undead decades ago. Nowadays, most people don't take even the most basic vampire precautions. The days of garlic wreaths and early curfews long gone. But Malika's parents still follow the old rules, much to her embarrassment. When a friend goes missing, Malika isn't sure what to think. Could it be the school counselor, Mr. Rupert, who definitely seems to be hiding something? Or could it be something more dangerous? Boog is determined to save her friend. But is she ready to admit vampires might not be vanquished after all? No one ever expected the vanquishers to return, but if their town needs protection from the undead, Malika knows who to call. I don't really have much of an update. It's July 16th. Did I start this on the 15th or the 14th? I think I started on the 15th. I am 20% of the way through the first book through the Vanquishers. 20%. I've only read for about 45 minutes. I didn't read anything yesterday. Read it today. I just came back from the gym, by the way. It is 1 a.m. Anyway, 20% of the Vanquishers. I'm liking it. It's a middle grade, so different mindset going in, different expectations. I'm liking it. I'm liking the main character. I'm liking the narrative voice. I'm liking the setup of the story so far. I honestly did not come here to talk about the Vanquishers. I got a bag of Guinness. That's all I can share. So I'm in the kitchen after coming back from the gym, just sitting here eating Guinness. I could be reading. Like, I could read and eat the Guinness. But I'm not. I think I'm going to do that actually. I think I'm going to do that. But anyway, okay, I just wanted to share that I had Guinea. The Vanquishers is like what, 200, 300 pages, and once again, it's a middle grade, so it's reading really fast. I think it's like 20 and something pages. I will up the number, and I'm 20% of the way through, and I've read 45 minutes max, so easy peasy. I gave this book 5 stars. I really liked it. The Vanquishers might rank above This Poison Heart and This Wicked Fate. Like, this would have, even if I didn't think about rethinking or revisiting This Poison Heart and This Wicked Fate and my thoughts, and even if they just stayed the way I thought about them before starting this vlog, The Vanquishers, book 1 of the Vanquisher series, The Vanquishers, will still rank above them. That's how much I liked it. And it just reminded me how much I love middle grade. I keep forgetting how great middle grade is and how much I love middle grade until I read another middle grade and love it. So I don't know what that have to do with you, but you know, I don't know if that makes an impact on you. But I love middle grade, and The Vanquishers reminded me about that. So, favorite aspects of the book: character work, relationship work. I loved all the characters in the friend group. Malika, what them name? Malika, Cedric, Jules, and Aaron. Their friendship felt incredibly real, and the fact that Cedric, Jules, and Malika had a long-standing and incredibly strong friendship was believable, and I loved how they welcomed Aaron into the friend group. One thing I noticed and loved was how neither relationship dynamic overshadowed the other. The already established friendship between the 3 characters didn't take a backseat to the developing friendship between Aaron and Cedric, Jules, and Malika, because even though they're welcoming a new friend into the group, there are certain things that Aaron wouldn't get or wouldn't be able to join in on seamlessly because of the long history between Cedric, Malika, and Jules. But at the same time, it didn't feel like Aaron was sitting outside of the group. The characters and the relationships, the other relationships in the book were written quite well. I loved Malika's parents' relationship with each other, and also how they treated Malika and then Malika's friends, and then Aaron's mother. It was very obvious how much he cared about Aaron. Cedric's fathers, great. I loved their relationship and their relationship dynamic, great. Jules' mother and grandmother, amazing. Everything top 10. Another positive thing about this book was it's a middle grade book where the parents are present and take an active part in the book. And it was done well in the sense that even though the parents know about what's going on, they're actually present in the children's lives. The children are not just going around doing anything they want, putting themselves in danger, and the parents have no clue what's going on. Even though the parents know what's going on and they're actively protecting their children, it didn't feel like they were taking over the story. They weren't the ones driving the plot along. It was still a middle grade book where the children were the main focus and they were like moving the plot forward. They were the active drivers of the plot, but the parents were still very much involved, and I loved that. Finally, the vampires and the vampire lore and everything about vampires in this book, it was just so interesting. I really liked it, and it was very age appropriate, I want to say. But like the idea of the vampires, how the vampires worked, their abilities and everything, very interesting, very well written. Moving along. So now we're going to talk about Secrets of the Reaping. Malika and her best friend, Cedric, Jules, and Aaron, aka the squad, stick together no matter what. Now that vampires are back, they'll need to take their vanquisher lessons more seriously than ever. But who is behind this return of the undead? When strange disappearances keep happening across their community and the Department of Vampire Affairs not so subtly warn Malika's mom to keep quiet about vampires returning, it looks like uncovering the truth won't be so easy. The squad is eager to kick some undead butts, but will they be able to convince their parents they are ready to fight alongside the vanquishers?
Okay, so I'm in the car. I'm at the pool. I just finished work for today. With my hair like this, I look the same age or like barely older than the children I'm coaching. But anyway, the second book for the Vanquisher series, the ebook on Libby, 4 weeks wait, and I'm not waiting that long. The audiobook was available to borrow, and I did borrow it, but I'm very nervous because this would be my second. The last time I read an audiobook was like 10 years ago, and didn't have the best time. I kept falling asleep. I kept forgetting what I heard because there's a lot going on in my brain, and if my voice is not the one like reading the words, it gets drowned out by everything else. But I've been religiously listening to podcasts. I've been getting into podcasts for like the last year or so, or half a year. So like big up, welcome to Night Vale and the Magnus Archives. So I'm like, okay, with the podcast, I'm listening to the podcast, I can pay attention, or I can do other things and remember what the podcast says, and I can stay awake. So I'm like, okay, some experience with the podcast should help with the audiobook. So I requested the audiobook and I started listening to it on the drive to work. It was fine, it was great. The narrator, I don't have a problem with her voice, which is so great, so amazing. So I got through chapter 1 on the drive here, and just like the first book, immediately in love with it. I love it. It's cute. I love the characters. They're my children. I've adopted them. Writing, great. I think it's very middle grade because it's a middle grade book, but like I like it. I just think it's funny. It's hilarious, I think. Anyway, so that's what's happening. Oh, the You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight also had like a long wait, so I was like, okay, let me put it on hold. And then by the time I finish the audiobook of The Vanquisher, Secrets of the Reapers, You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight hopefully has like the wait is cut down or it's almost there. I was about to leave and I opened Libby to put the audiobook on. You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight is available to request. So I'm like, why would you do that to me? So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna borrow it so that somebody else doesn't borrow it by the time I need it. So I have 14 days. Definitely am gonna finish Secrets of the Reapers in like 2 days max, maybe. Okay, it's an audiobook. I'm gonna say 2 days max. So I should still have 12 days to finish You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight. And if anything, I can just renew the hold and get the next 2 weeks, which I won't need most likely. Yeah, so that's the plan. So I've read This Poison Heart. Well, I've read Cinderella Is Dead, This Poison Heart, This Wicked Fate, The Vanquishers Book 1, currently on The Vanquishers Book 2. We're doing great. And July is not over yet. We're more than halfway, but it's fine.
The reviews for The Secrets of the Reaping and Rise of the Wrecking Crew, they're going to be very short because basically my thoughts for the entire trilogy are the same. Like everything that I talked about in the review for the Vanquishers, all of that, it was the same thing that happened in the second and the third book. So it carried along. There was no decrease in quality, right? So it's just a couple extra sentences I'm gonna add on. For the Secret of the Reaping, I gave it 5 stars. Amazing, great. So the only thing I have to say about Secret of the Reaping is that it was a stellar sequel. Like it's an amazing follow up. The way how Kalynn Bayron rehashed information that we learned in the first book and expanding upon it in the second book, and then just carrying along the story. Amazing, amazing. And then as I said, everything else I said about the first book. Same thing here, character work, relationships, storytelling ability, the lore of the vampires. We got to see more of the vampires. We got to see more vampire powers. Those were amazing. I love that. Yeah. Um, One more thing to say, I listened to the audiobook for Secrets of the Reaping, which you should know by now. And the narrator, whose name, let me look at it, Estacia Sanders, I hope that's how you pronounce it. She was great. I like her. I like her. Anyway, really enjoyed it. Moving on to the final book in the trilogy, Rise of the Wrecking Crew. San Antonio is on lockdown, taken over by the new hive. No one can deny that the undead are back now, but the vanquishers found out the hard way when they learned that an old friend is behind the latest string of attacks. As the squad hide out at an abandoned combat training facility, honing their vampire butt-kicking skills, they begin to suspect that they are not alone. But when a vial of Dracula's blood, able to give unrivaled power to the vampire that consumes it, is stolen from the bunker, the vanquishers race to recover it before it falls into the wrong hands. The vanquishers have always been Malika's family, the one she trusts the most. But what does it mean when a former vanquisher, one of her heroes, is now the enemy? I gave this one 4.5 stars. The only reason this one didn't get a 5 star is because Kalynn Bayron introduced a romantic relationship, and there was supposed to be development on page, but I wasn't seeing the development, or it wasn't enough for me to really care about it, which is like it at that point I was just annoyed whenever I would see a relationship that needed more work. So to be fair, I didn't have to take off a whole half a star, but I don't do 4.75, 3.7. I don't do that. It's 4.55. So it didn't feel like a 5 star book because of the relationship. And even though it wasn't a major part of the story, it was still pretty big based on the characters who were in the relationship. And it just wasn't developed as well as it could have been. So I took off half a star. That's how it works sometimes. That's really how it works. But yeah, The Vanquishers as a trilogy, they are probably my favorite works by Kalynn Bayron. As individual books themselves, The Vanquishers, Secret of the Reaping, Loki, like thinking back, no, to be honest, I have to go back and read This Poison Heart and This Wicked Fate for real, and see what I think about it. But it might be The Vanquisher, Secrets of the Reaping, This Poison Heart, This Wicked Fate, Rise of the Wrecking Crew. Why? This was like an outline for the square. I don't know why I did that, but Rise of the Wrecking Crew. Yeah. The next book is You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight. At Camp Mirror Lake, terror is the name of the game, but can you survive the night? Charity Curtis has the summer job of her dreams, playing the final girl at Camp Mirror Lake. Guests pay to be scared in this full contact terror game as Charity and her summer crew recreate scenes from a classic slasher film, Curse of Camp Mirror Lake. The more realistic the fare, the better for business. But the last weekend of the season, Charity's co-workers begin disappearing, and when one ends up dead, Charity's role as the final girl suddenly becomes all too real. If Charity and her girlfriend Bessie hope to survive the night, they'll need to figure out what this killer is after. Is there more to the story of Mirror League and its dangerous past than Charity ever suspected?
Okay, I'm sick. I have a fever, and you can hear it in my voice. But I finished You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight. I'm not sure how I feel about it, like my final thoughts on it, but I am feeling a little bit disappointed. Right now it's sitting at a 3.5 stars. I don't know. It was just
This one I gave 2.5 stars. No, I was so disappointed in this book. I was it it might be my fault. I was hyped about this book before it even came out, and then I just never got around to reading it. So that was years, more like 2 years of anticipation. And then I read it, okay, this one is definitely not my fault because I read it. It was hyped up as this horror, like a slasher book. And I was expecting a lot, and I didn't get everything that I wanted. This is a slight spoiler for the rest of the video, but it's my video, so I can do anything that I want. Even though this isn't the lowest rated book in the vlog, it is the one that disappointed me most because of how much I was anticipating it, like based on how long I knew about the book, and also the way it was pitched and the way Kalynn Bayron herself and then other reviewers and the publishers hyped it up. Like the comps they use, everything about it was just not what I got when I read the book. Yeah, I even requested the arc. I got declined. But that's how, 2023. I requested the arc in 2023, which is when it came out. And I got declined, and I just never got around to reading it. So that's my fault. But I was really anticipating it. So here's what I liked about it. The atmosphere and the setting of the book was well crafted. I had a very clear picture of all the different locations in the book, and then the roles of the camp staff and how the camp experience was supposed to go was very clear and delivered in a way that it didn't interrupt the story. However, the pacing was all over the place. It was so inconsistent. It was starting to piss me off, right? And then not only was the pacing off, but Kalynn Bayron tried to fit so many different horror elements into this book. And it was such a short book that they didn't blend correctly. And then also, some of them were just so cliche. Like I could just guess what could happen or what would happen. Like maybe not the exact play-by-play, but like the vague, like you watch a movie and you're like, okay, this is what's gonna happen at the end. You don't know how they're gonna end up there, and you don't know who's actually going to die. Maybe you do, but sometimes it's like, okay, someone is gonna die this way, someone is gonna die before this happens. Oh, or you watch a movie and like just the way how the music is playing and the camera angle and the way how a character is walking, you can be like, okay, there's gonna be a jump scare here, and then the jump scare happens and you're not scared. That's what happened in this book. Like it was boring because I knew what was going to happen as soon as a certain plot device or as soon as a certain trope was introduced. This is why the pacing pissed me off, is because there were certain scenes that I really enjoyed, which is why the book was almost a 3-star. But because they were sandwiched between and often interrupted by scenes where I was like, okay, let's move on. I couldn't get into the book fully. Like I couldn't immerse myself into the book fully, right? So the pacing, it fuck up everything. Going back, like to expand upon like how many elements Kalynn Bayron tried to fit into the book. One thing that didn't work for me, this one is a slight spoiler maybe, but Kalynn Bayron added a supernatural element later on in the book. And I didn't like that because it was much more impactful when it was just humans being evil, like just people being shit. And then all of a sudden, there's some magic, some supernatural foolishness going on. And it just took away all everything that was going great for the book. All of a sudden it just never feel right. And then the lore, the actual build, like the actual writing and the build up, the lore about the supernatural elements of the book, it was just so weak that I could have actually, except for the ending, I could have just ignored it and said, okay, this is not actually in the book. Like there was nothing substantial there. The character work is what I can definitely say was very enjoyable, and I liked Charity and Bessie. The other characters, I didn't feel strong about them, but I could say that they were written well. Charity and Bessie's relationship, it was okay, right? It was fine. And I think it's because it was already an established relationship, right? So we didn't actually see like the build up or the attempt. That sounds mean, but the attempt at writing a build up to a strong romantic relationship. The relationship was already established, so the way they cared about each other, why something happening to them would have been so impactful to the other character, that was believable because, you know, they're in an established relationship. I don't need to say, okay, but why do you care about them? You know, it's the groundwork is there, and it wasn't being written as the story went along. So I couldn't even say, oh, them shouldn't like each other, Them already like each other, right? So that's none of my business why them like each other, right? Yeah, that's it though. Like the book was, that's it. That's really it. Bottom line is I was disappointed, and it pissed me off how disappointed I was. Moving on, the last book I read for this vlog is Sleep Like Death. I was going to read Make Me a Monster because by the time I was reading Sleep Like Death, Make Me a Monster was like 2 weeks out. I just didn't feel like it at that point. I was done. I was burnt out with in general I was burnt out with the vlog, and I was like, let me move on to something else. And because of my thoughts on the romantic relationship, Make Me a Monster is like a romantasy or romantic horror or something. The romance is a big part of it, and I'm like, okay, well, now I don't want to read it because the romance is a big part of it. So that's the main reason I didn't read Make Me a Monster. I might read it later on. I'll probably read it later on. It just wasn't. I just didn't feel like reading it for this book, for this vlog. And then also, I did not read the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde retelling. What's it called? My Dear Henry. I didn't read it. I actually borrowed it from the library on Libby because that's the only way I can do it in Jamaica. I love that for me. Anyway, I borrowed it from the library and I started reading it. And I knew it was a historical fiction, and I knew it was gay or queer. I don't know if they use gay or I don't know how. I didn't get far enough. I know it was a male-male romance, right? But at the point when I was reading it, like, listen to what I'm saying. It might sound ridiculous, but bear with me. At the time when I was reading it, I had read so many fantasy books, mostly by like fantasy books or some form of alternate universe books by Black authors, and then also other authors of color, where racism wasn't a thing. Like, it's like sometimes it's a completely different worlds, or like, you know, but then sometimes it's like on Earth, and you know, it's fantasy. Let's pretend racism wasn't real. Let's live the good life. And then I started the book, and then Black people can't get anything good. Like, and I'm like, I don't have time for this. Because, like, I already knew I was going into the book and there was going to be some stereotypical homophobia. And I don't know why the concept of, okay, if homophobia is in the book, then racism will be in the book. I don't know why. Like, I started the book and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to deal with the racism and homophobia. And I just wasn't in the mood. I just didn't feel like reading it here. And then once again, I'm assuming the romance would have been a big part. And I don't want it to be more negative than positive because I genuinely, let me finish what I'm saying. Anyway, let me review Sleep Like Death and then come back with my final thoughts on Kalynn Bayron. Kalynn Bayron, her as a writer, and her backlist, what I read at least. So, Sleep Like Death. Princess Eve was raised with one purpose: to destroy the night, an evil sorcerer who terrorizes Queensbridge with his wicked magic. Her own unique magic, the ability to conjure weapons from nature, makes her a worthy adversary. Far too many subjects of Queensbridge have been devastated by the knight's trickery. As she approaches her 17th birthday, Eve is ready to battle, but her mother, Queen Regina, has been acting bizarrely, talking to a strange mirror alone at night. Then a young man claiming to be the knight's messenger appears and shares a shocking truth about Eve's past. Unsure of who to trust or what to do next, Eve must find the courage to do what she's always done: fight. But will it be enough to save her family and her queendom? I gave this book 2.5 stars. Remember when I was talking about You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight, and I said it wasn't the lowest rated book in the vlog, but it was my most disappointing? This is obviously the lowest rated book. And this isn't my most disappointing because I low-key didn't have any hopes for it at all because I wasn't really thinking about it. But I feel like I hate this one. I feel genuinely, maybe not hate, because 2.5 is a dislike, but I don't think it's hate. And let me tell you why. The book was genuinely going to be a 3.5 stars up until the end of part 1. And then you know what happened in part two? You know what happened in part two? Guess. Everybody take a guess. Take a guess what happened in part two. Fucking romance, bro. And believe me when I say, being upset about romance upsets me. Like, it upsets my spirit because I am a hopeless romantic. A decent romance can have me overlooking some foolishness. Not all the time, maybe just during the reading experience, but afterwards I'll start thinking, hey, but anyway, that's what I'm saying. A decent romance, it can do a lot. I'll be kicking my feet and giggling. I'll be, listen, I am a romantic, okay? I'm a hopeless romantic. I'm a romance girly. So imagine how frustrated I am for the romance to be my least favorite part of so many books by one author. Imagine romance being the thing that ruins a book for me. The shock, the horror. I can't believe it. I can't. Anyway, so yeah, part two, from the beginning of part two to the end of the book, shit. Why? Because all of it was surrounding the romance between Eve and the dude whose name I forgot, the guy in the mirror. And I'm like, how did we get here? There was no development. It's the same thing that happened in Cinderella Is Dead. There was no development, and then all of a sudden they're making these grand statements about their everlasting love for this character who, do you know their last name? Like, like, come on now. The concept, I don't know it. I mean, I know. Let me pause. Let me take a breath. Hold on. Let me take a breath. Let me calm down. It's not that serious. Right. So the entirety of part two was surrounding the romance between Eve and this guy who was an important character in part one, which was fine. Like, him in part one, he was fine. Part one of the book was good. Them being together or them liking each other, and the fact that the continuation of the plot from that point forward relied on their feelings for each other, feelings that I was not believing in. Once again, building a house on a mount of sand. Like, you can't structure 50% of your story based on this one detail that is not even that strong. I'm upset about how upset it made me, not because it's not that serious, but like, this isn't something you should be struggling with. I don't think. And it's the fact that, guys, I'm sounding like I'm hating on Miss Bayron. I love Miss Bayron. I love her as a person on social media. I don't know if that's how she is in real life. I hope she's nice. But on social media, I love her. The concept of her books, I like them. There are aspects of every one of her books that I enjoy, but it's always the romance. And the thing is, though, right now she's hinting at all these new books, and they're all romanticy, or romantic something. I'm like, are you going to improve the romance though? Like, I'm really wishing for the best. I'm hoping for the best. I'm wishing every win on Kalynn Bayron. Like, her books winning awards, yes, I love that for you. Big up yourself, girl. Anything from me? You're not getting anything from me if it's a romance focused thing. Like, write a purely like a horror novel, a straight horror novel, and I feel like I could give it 5 stars. Kalynn Bayron could write a horror novel and I would give it 5 stars. If it was just horror romance, I feel like it's going to fuck up. Like, I don't know. But like, anyway, let's go back to the stuff I liked about Sleep Like Death, which is what could have been a 3.5 stars. Her magic, amazing. The way how it was described, great. The possibilities of her magic, the way how Eve utilized her magic for the most part, because there were sometimes she was annoying, and then there was a character who pointed out how annoying she was, or like how she wasn't using her magic the way how she could have, and I'm like, okay, you're right. But she was fine. Her magic was fine. Her relationship with her mother, the dilemma her mother had with her birthday coming up, Eve finding out why her mother was so against the party, all of that, great. The betrayal that happened at the end of part one, great. How the characters worked together to ultimately solve the big problem or to beat the big bad, great. The idea of the big bad in the first part of the book, amazing, even though the climax of part 1, where Eve actually met the villain, I don't know if it's because it was poorly written or because I was just embarrassed for Eve, but I wasn't feeling it. But it wasn't bad, but it wasn't like, oh my god, yes, out of my seat. But then there was also another confrontation in part 2 where I'm like, there's too many people are involved, and then the way how you're talking about who doing what, who coming from where, it was a lot going on, and it was weak. I don't know. I mean, I know, but I'm trying. I really I don't want that. I don't want these to be my feelings. That's the problem. I genuinely. Am I talking too fast? Hold on. I need to calm down for real. The, the thing is, though, I genuinely wanted Kalynn Bayron to stay on my favorite authors list. I wanted her backlist to be something somebody could ask me for a general recommendation, like a person in my real life. Somebody who wants to get into reading, they could ask for a recommendation, and I feel like I could shoehorn a Kalynn Bayron book into any recommendation I wanted if I liked the books the way how I thought I would like them. This Poison Heart and This Wicked Fate, without the reread, I'm going to say I would still recommend them. The Vanquishers, the trilogy, I would still recommend it. Like, wholehearted, no holdbacks, no hesitation. Read those books. Cinderella Is Dead, I'm gonna be like, okay, read this, but da 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 da. Or I'm not saying it's gonna be your favorite, but if this is what you're looking for right now to hold you over, read Cinderella Is Dead, right? Sleep Like Death is like, if you want somebody like, they're looking for retellings, and I'm like, well, this is a retelling if you want it here, but I'm not like, don't take like, I don't know. So Sleep Like Death is the final book that really cemented to me that writing romance is Kalynn Bayron's weakest aspect, unfortunately. I'm not trying to be mean, I'm just saying it. It's my opinion, and that's like, the evidence is the rest of this blog. And genuinely, I need to stop saying genuinely because, of course, why would I lie? So the thing is, though, even though I didn't like any of the romance, the romance in Sleep Like Death compared to Cinderella Is Dead, I think it was a little bit better. The reason Sleep Like Death got a lower rating than Cinderella Is Dead, one is because I've read so many books between Cinderella Is Dead and Sleep Like Death where my reading tastes have evolved, so my rating would be different. And I didn't reread Cinderella Is Dead with the current mindset that I have now. And also, I knew the issue with the romance in Cinderella Is Dead from like the first couple chapters, so it wasn't a big change. Sleep Like Death, I was enjoying it up until 50%. I was literally enjoying it up until part 1. I was vibing with the book. It wasn't going to be my favorite, but it would have been a good book that I would have enjoyed recommending. Then romance, it just dropped, and I'm like, because of that drop, I rated it more harshly. Will I be keeping Kalynn Bayron on my favorite authors list? No, unfortunately not. Will she stay as an author I like not as a person or not as like a social media concept, like the idea of a person behind a screen, not that, like, as an author, will she still be an author I enjoy? I believe so. Outside of the romance, as I've been saying over and over and over again, most of her other story elements I enjoy reading. Like, I like the story, but them bitches should not be kissing. You and you wanna enough of that together, like, I don't know. Yeah, I think that's it though. Will I pick up more books by Kalynn Bayron? Yes. But I will not have high expectations for them if the romance is one of the big selling points. Like, Make Me a Monster, I'm probably gonna read it at some point, maybe this year. But I'm not going to be too excited for it because I know how big of a deal the romance will be in the book, right? But I do think the horror elements will make up for it. Like, it won't be like a 2-star and below. If Make Me a Monster is rated a 2-star, God forbid, 2-star, and then I read another book that Kalynn Bayron comes out with after, which is, she has another middle grade coming out that I forgot the name of, but I might read that one. But not that, I doubt that would be, it should be, she releases another YA or adult book, if I also rate that one 2.5 stars or lower, I'm gonna stop reading Kalynn Bayron's book because I have a 3 strike rule. And it's not even like 3 bad books. If it's 1 average book and 2 bad books, I'm done. If it's 3 bad books, I'm done. If it's like 1 really bad book and then 1 bad book, I'm done. I'm not even giving it 3 chances. But like, I don't think she'll get there. I don't think she'll get there. I genuinely believe I could have a good time with her books. Right? Those are my thoughts. Anyway, the experience was fun. The experiment was fun. I can genuinely say to you right now, as I'm filming this video and I'm about to edit it this week, I can genuinely say the next reading vlog of this format, of this type that you will see from me is Kennedy Ryan. I will be reading Kennedy Ryan's Backlist. All of it. Every single. Unless I DNF a book and then decide not to complete the series or read the companion books based on how her Backlist is set up. Anyway, Kennedy Ryan. Yeah. That's it though. Thank you for watching. If you've made it this far, please stick around if you want. Regarding liking, commenting, and subscribing, do what you want. Bye!